I mean one thing. That music means I'm back. It's your MTV refugee, peripheral visionary, and tour guide to the far side. It's Dez Dickerson. How you doing, folks? It's and we're doing the usual, and it's I haven't been in for about 12 years, so we're doing the mad dash, trying to get and I'm just gonna get way TMI with this. I've had these eyesight challenges where, I'm about to get my fifth opinion because the optometrist said one thing, the ophthalmologist said another thing, and basically my eyesight keeps getting worse and nobody can tell me what the deal is. So, you know what? How come my network? Well, anyway, I'll get my network working and get my Wi-Fi up on the fly because after all, we're professionals here. And, that's the way we roll. So, Bell, I kind of feel like, first of all, I've been away for a while, but I'm back like a bad rash. You know what I mean?
I thought you had gone off to Mogadishu or something to fight in the Civil War there.
Yeah, I did, but then I found out at the sight of blood, I struggled. But I feel like one of those Japanese guys in World War II who kind of came stumbling out of the jungle like 27 years after the war was over.
Yeah, and you just found out it was over.
Yeah, it's like, you mean the war's over? But it's good to be back. And me being back can really only mean one thing. That Jesus is coming back soon. For me to be back on the air, there's got to be something apocalyptic or cataclysmic coming. So
who knows? Maybe it's today.
Could be. And the way things are going with the technology here, I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't complain at all. So anyway, we're getting everything working while I'm kind of doing my thing.
You never ran into any of this on MTV, did you, Brother Dez?
No, nothing ever went wrong.
Yeah.
Nothing ever went
Ever?
wrong. And when things went wrong, you have like 12 guys with flashlights in their mouths running up to fix it. So, oh, man. But, for those of you who have listened to me in the past, we're reunited and it feels so good. And for the rest of you who don't know me from Adam, a sort of an introduction slash reintroduction is in order. So here's the deal. Here's my shtick. We are not in Kansas anymore, Toto. It's not. And it's funny, since the last time I was on air, I've heard a few people say this over the course of the last couple of years, whereas, when I first introduced this, I was like the lone wolf, but it's not red versus blue. It's not red or right versus left. It's not conservative versus liberal anymore. We are living in the age of reality versus unreality. And we need to understand that we've gone from different perspectives to different planets. Now, and you think about the short period of time in which this has taken place, relatively short period of time. Now we have a fully established and entrenched cohort on the left. And all of this was, just driven into overdrive with Trump's reelection. The insane became more insane. So now, and this term was just kind of getting, started back the last time I was on air. But, now we collectively refer to them as the woke. But see, I call it, I've always called it, and I'm going to keep calling it, the unreality cohort. See, the unreality cohort reserves unto itself the right to recreate reality in its own image, to define and redefine every aspect of life, both theirs and yours. So you got to have pronouns. They get to decide. They think. But here's the bottom line. If you control the language of a people, then you control the people. So that's the purpose of that tactic. See, the unreality cohort are the tribe of it is if we say it is. And see, when I first started talking about all this stuff, it was still so new that folks were like, well, I don't know. Oh, awesome. If we could get that up there, awesome. We're almost there, folks. We're multitasking. We're walking and chewing gum at the same time here. So I'm ecstatic. But you know what? I got to pull this up. So that's why I stopped calling myself a conservative years ago. Stopped calling myself conservative because they control the language. So the word conservative meant racist, bigot, homophobe, all those things. So hang on, I got to get this thing up on that screen. Cool. All right. So I don't call myself a conservative. I call myself a clear thinker. A clear thinker. And I think that encapsulates it a lot better without the baggage that's been attached to the term conservative. See, every clear thinker adheres to conservative principles, but not every self-identified conservative is a clear thinker. So that's why I decided several years ago to found the Clear Thinkers Party. And we're on a mission to separate the clear thinkers from the Kool-Aid drinkers and to make America think again. See, there's a clip. Yeah, baby. Let the cartoon begin. So let me pull up this. So we got a lot planned for today. We got a lot planned for today. We're going to have fun. I'm going to knock the rust off. We're going to get everything working, and then we're going to be, we're going to be rocking and rolling here. Let me do this. There we go. So we're about up for a break. We can take advantage of the break to do some troubleshooting. And after the break, we're going to come back and kind of jump into our first segment. Good to be back. Hope you're ready. Hope you got your track shoes, or as they say in the UK, your boots laced up. And we'll be right back. WTN Super Talk 99.7, Dez Dickerson with you.
Alleged MS-13 gang member Abrego Garcia suspected of human trafficking. We've got that story and more coming up at 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
There's something about hearing Ken do the news that just makes the news like more real. You know what I mean? And I believe it when I hear his voice.
Oh, thanks, Brother Dez.
Yeah, because everybody else, I'm cynical, so I doubt them. Are they lying to me? They're probably lying to me. They're probably lying.
I tell you what, man, it takes a lot of checking and cross-checking because of all the information that's out there today.
Man, and so much information that's misinformation and disinformation.
Yeah.
And I was talking to some friends the other day, and the wife was saying, she reads two things. She subscribes to the Epic Times and reads it cover to cover. And I think that dude just got indicted, didn't he? Something like that.
I'll look that up.
But then she reads like the headline and the front page of the New York Times because she can do that without paying for it. And I just about popped a blood vessel. I said, why are you reading the New York Times? That's the worst possible thing that you could read. You'd be better off, going to the Politburo and getting your news. But anyway.
Yeah, that dude with Epic Times, he was indicted.
See, isn't that weird?
Wow.
The skinny little guy in this commercials?
I don't know if it's the guy in the commercials or if it's the actual owner. You know what I mean? It's a Chinese-owned publication. So I don't know if it's the dude. The dude in the commercials might just be a spokes dude.
Yeah.
But I think the actual owner got popped. So and here's the thing: you never know. He might have gotten jammed up, and it wasn't. And it wasn't him, and it wasn't. You never know. But I will say this. We are in the age where the accusation equals guilt. Presumption of innocence, that's gone. Innocent until proven guilty, that's gone.
Yeah, it sticks. It sticks.
Yep, the accusation is guilt, period. So, we'll see. But, yeah, I thought I read that.
Yeah, $67 million. He's accused of laundering $67 million.
Whew, that's a lot of clean cash right there.
Bill Guan.
Well, right now, Bill Guan to prison if they don't.
Yeah, that was back on June 3rd.
Wow, that's crazy. And the conspiracy side of me is like, well, see, the left went after him. The left went after him. Somewhere Chuck Schumer's behind this.
Well, and you can't discount that. You can't just say definitely that's what happened, but it is something that if it did happen, there's a trail somewhere.
No doubt. And I tell you what, I'm kind of jumping ahead to a story I was saving for the end of the show if I need it. But this thing with Letitia James now, you heard about that?
Yeah, vaguely, yes.
Okay, so here's the deal. Here's the woman who just launched vicious lawfare against Donald Trump. She spends all day, every day, jamming people up, getting people arrested on, financial crimes, et cetera, et cetera. So they found out that she, there's all sorts of stuff that she's guilty of. I'm just going to need that keyboard. All sorts of stuff she's guilty of. She pretended her father was her husband in order to not just take out loans for rental property, but to do so in a way that is more financially favorable. She's thank you, sir. I'm trying to remember all the charges. She essentially, her sheet, it's not 34 charges, but the number is going up. And she's going to prison.
Mortgage fraud.
Mortgage fraud, yes. Mortgage fraud. And that's not, that's a cut and dried thing. That's like the radar gun. You don't lie. So she's busted for multiple counts of mortgage fraud. I mean, she's just like, she is screwed. Okay, I got to get this working. There we go. So anyway, interesting things. So we're going to talk a little bit about everyone has known a kid at some point in their lives. Might have been you, for all we know, who's always acting up just for attention. Everybody. And maybe it was, a younger brother or sister or a cousin. Maybe it was you, like I said. Now, in the modern Democrat Party, that kid is Jasmine Crockett. Always acting up, trying to get attention. And see, the media all love to keep giving her attention. But I think, here's what I think. We need to stop that. We just need to stop that. Because the best positive, what do you do with a kid that acts up to get attention? You ignore them. You ignore them. The best thing we could possibly do is ignore Jasmine Crockett. Just stop paying attention to her. Stop giving her all that press. She's on TV 15 times a day. Stop it. I mean, she's Maxine Waters with a better weave. And she says even dumber things. So, and I get it, the Dems are flailing for a voice. They're trying to fill that void left by Kamala. Of course, Kamala kind of was a void, but that's a whole other matter. And so they elevate Crockett because they have nothing to offer except more Trump oppositional disorder. What else have they got? AOC's kind of played out that whole, she and Bernie doing the reunited and it feels so good tour, whatever the heck they've been doing. So here's what I say again. Let's take away the little they do have and force them to find another fool to elevate. But here's the thing. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think that's ever going to happen. And here's why. It's not going to happen because of the fact that, all of the talking heads on TV, and we're guilty of it on radio too, everybody, it's low-hanging fruit. It's easy pickings. And, and it's like going to a NASCAR race waiting for a wreck, But I just think the best thing we could do, just ignore her until she goes away.
It is pretty ironic, though, that she got charged with stuff she was accusing him of.
Oh, and that's the way it always is. That's the left's MO.
Yeah.
They accuse you of the thing they themselves are guilty of doing. That if you take away that tactic, they'll be mute. They got nothing else. So, I got to say this, and I'm not hating because I love Jesse Waters, but Jesse Waters he's the chief offender in terms of always talking about Jasmine Crockett. Dude, leave it alone. Just let it go. Stop talking about her. See, I think that like a bratty kid always looking for attention, if we stop giving her attention, she'll go away. Because she doesn't have anything to say. She doesn't
Sometimes the crazy is funny.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, she'll say things that don't even make sense. You know what I mean? I mean, she'll say things that like literally do not even make sense. She speaks and you're like wondering, what? what was that even? So again, Jesse, just give it a break. I think that what we should do on our side right now, and just go ahead and wave at me when we get to the break because I'm still getting my sea legs back. We're there? So, we're going to keep talking about this. We're going to take a break, do the thing, do the break thing. Dez Dickerson with you today on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Loaded for bear. We got a lot to go into today, and looking forward to it. We'll be right back.
$12:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Alleged MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia was suspected of human trafficking. Fox News claims that is in a Homeland Security Investigations report it has obtained. This report from 2022. Fox News says the report states that official law enforcement investigations revealed that Garcia was a member of MS-13, which President Trump has designated as a terror organization. President Trump had this to say this afternoon about Maryland U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen's trip to El Salvador to meet with Garcia, demanding his release.
He's a fake. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad.
A federal judge is blocking the Trump administration from firing the majority of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau.
After chipping away at the CFPB for months, the Trump administration this week announced that it had begun the process of firing the bulk of the agency's workforce. But a federal judge on Friday put those plans on pause, saying the firings might violate a court order. The Trump administration argues it's trying to make the agency more efficient by firing about 1,500 workers, while lawyers representing the government employees say the changes would wreck the agency's mission of protecting consumers. Peter Haralambous, ABC News.
Terrible end to the week in South Carolina. Officials confirm a 13-year-old middle school student was killed while returning home from a field trip in Charlotte after a school bus he was on blew a tire and flipped on I-77 yesterday afternoon.
A student, Wesley Willis, was riding in one of the other school buses behind the one that crashed.
When I heard everybody screaming and all that, I looked up and I saw that the bus was flipped over.
Tiffany Portfield's child was in one of the other buses, but says she can relate.
No one wants to get that text message or that phone call that their child is injured and you're not there.
The bus that crashed was carrying 2 adults and about 35 students. There were several other injuries.
That is Chuck Sievertson reporting. He says the investigation into the bus crash continues. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
that's the question. Are you ready? I'm just now starting to feel like I'm ready because we had not a train wreck. We had like several trains wrecking like right before we went on air. But you know what? I'm feeling good now. Feeling good. Have you ever, like after a great player has had a little bit of a layoff because of an injury, like Patrick Mahomes is out for a few games and comes back, and first time he throws the ball, he kind of dirts it. I kind of felt like that for a minute. But you know what? I'm going to be spinning it now. We're good now. And, in a masterful segue, we're going to talk about Stephen A. Smith, who's known for sports and for his expertise, primarily with respect to the NBA and basketball, but in all things sports. Been a sports guy on TV and on, ESPN and on radio for years and years. Just re-upped. Homeboy just got paid, I think, like $100 million or something?
That's good work if you can get it.
I know. It's like $100 million, bro? Really? I need to talk to him about some investment opportunities. But anyway, so back to what we were talking about with the Jasmine thing and needing to move on. We just need to move on. There are some folks that are clamoring for Stephen A. because he's been making a play. And he hasn't been shy about it. I mean, it's obvious. And he's even addressed it directly that he's, positioning himself because, and he's not wrong about this, the Democrat Party is a dumpster fire, and they need leadership, and they got nobody. So he's stepping up saying, I'm your guy. And saying that, he's a communicator. It's what he does for a living. And I'll tell you this, I'd rather listen to him than Jasmine Crockett. Let's just put it that way. But, some are clamoring for Stephen A., and I can understand why. He's charismatic. Like I said, he's articulate. But I don't see that one happening, and here's why. First of all, he's an acquired taste to a great degree. I mean, there are folks that love him. There are other folks, I'm sure, that hear him for the first time, and they're like, what in the world is this loudmouth dude here? He's bombastic. He's opinionated. I don't know anybody who's like that, but I've heard of people like that. And he's extremely entertaining. You got to give him that. He is extremely entertaining. But the primary reason I don't see Stephen A. happening is that I don't think the Democrat establishment is going to be having that. I just don't. As much as they'll talk about, the DEI and RESPECT, whatever, the fact that, here you have an African-American man who's clean and articulate, that whole thing, when it comes right down to it, they're not going to let that happen. If anything, he'll end up being this year's Bernie. They'll find a way to burning him before he can get anywhere near, They might let him get as far as the debates, but I don't know. So personally, I think that if we're going to pivot to somebody else, and as clear thinkers, if we're going to favor somebody else for them to pivot to, I think John Fetterman is a better choice. Yeah, I said it, John Fetterman. The dude that they had to institutionalize right after he got elected, that John Fetterman. Since he's kind of, gotten a clean hoodie and gotten up and running, and I don't know, man. He doesn't say as many crazy things as he used to, and he actually says, some things that make sense. I find myself, it's like, I don't know what he and Bill Maher have been, drinking or smoking, whatever. But sometimes he'll say something and I'm like, well, that actually, that makes sense. That sounds more libertarian than, crack pipe crazy. And here's the thing. He is also an amusing character. So here's what I say. I say dump all the other dopey loudmouths, you know. Let's move on from Stephen A. And, you know, I just think Fetterman at this point deserves a look-see. That's what I think. So, on another note, those of you who have listened to me in the past know that I don't tend to take a lot of calls, and I understand that Chad, for whom I'm sitting in, doesn't really take calls either. Matt Murphy, on the other hand, is the king of the call-in. And, you know, it can be intimidating because he just takes so many calls and handles folks. But I'm thinking about today at some point opening up the phone lines, and we may not. But some of these things, like you know, what we just unpacked, the Jasmine Crockett, Stephen A., Fetterman thing, some of you may have opinions about that. And if you do, and you want to, you know, call in, we'll open up the phone lines later and let you opine about that. But we need to exercise, not just sit back and listen, but we need to exercise our own voices and develop our own opinions and those kinds of things. Because being a conservative should be more than just, you know, I should have hit the dump button right there. I'll get that. I'll get that reflex back down too. You know, there's some things we need to up our game a little bit. So, you know, we're coming up on another break, and I might head to it early, but I am going to tease where we're going. I want to talk a little bit about radio versus podcasting, talk radio versus podcasting, because both obviously very popular, very viable. You know, it's like anything else that's a matter of taste. You know, those who like one may not be fans of the other, and vice versa. You know, it's kind of like tomato. But I think it's worth talking about, and somebody needs to start talking about it out loud. So, who else is going to do it if I don't, right? So we're going to get into that after the break, and we're going to kind of deep dive into it some. But it's Dez Dickerson with you after being away for a long time. And no, I was not incarcerated, at least not long term. And I'm just pleased as punch, as Hubert Humphrey used to say, to be back. Excited to see what else we got pop in here today. And we're just getting started. We're just getting started. We're not even through the first hour yet. So we're going to take a break. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Dez Dickerson with you, and we will be right back.
Did you know you're overpaying for your health and wellness products?
With over 20 company-owned brands offering its members vitamins, supplements, wellness, and skincare products, you're able to save up to 70% off retail.
Members Nutrition can't change your life, but we can change the way you live.
Weather can change in an instant, and you need to be prepared for any outcome. That's why Generator Supercenter of Nashville will help keep your family safe and connected. We make buying a backup generator simple and easy, with financing options available, free in-home estimate, turnkey installations, no worry warranty, and most importantly, the monitoring and service of your fully installed generator. Come see us at our location in Nashville or visit us online. Generator Supercenter of Nashville. We serve all Middle Tennessee.
Bears are waking up and they're hungry, and you have to hear what happened to a woman in East Tennessee. I've got that for you coming up at 1 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I don't know about you, but I'm not about to mess with any bears.
No, sir. Nope.
You know what I'm saying?
Especially when they got their babies around.
Oof, Lord have mercy. Not even a Chicago bear. I'm not. I'm not doing that.
Those bears.
Those bears. The bears. You know, it used to be like just meat locker cold in this studio. And I've noticed today that it's not, and I dressed for it. But I've noticed today that it's not as cold in here as it used to be. So it's, I might have to come out of the hoodie here in a little bit. But
We moved all the sides of beef downstairs.
yeah, that's good. We're starting to unthaw. So, like I said, as I promised before the break, we were gonna, kind of unpack and get into talk radio, kind of not versus, but, podcasting a bit. It's both very popular. Talk radio been around for a long time. For me, the person in the era that really got me going on talk radio was Rush Limbaugh. Rush went on the air, I think, in like 1988. And I pretty much started listening to him at that time. And for me, he's still the king. He's still the master. But, technology, times, things change. And, podcasting became a thing. And you go back to, like, Joe Rogan's name is synonymous with podcasting. When Joe started, it was almost like they were just goofing off. It was him and a friend and a laptop in his basement. And they had no idea. If you could have told them, hey, look, dude, 10 years from now, you're going to be doing 100 million or more a year. And, they were just goofing off, talking about stupid things, locker room things, whatever. But, we're in a place now. Do you know that there are 900,000 podcasts? And I think it's just in America. No, 900,000. That's like almost every man, woman, and child in America has their own podcast. And there's some great ones, and there are some stupid ones, and everything in between. There are some that I think people are just doing just because they want to say they have a podcast, and mama and them are listening, and that's about it. But both talk radio and podcasting can really be broken down into two buckets: stories and issues. Stories and issues. Talk radio tends to center on stories. Podcasts, on the other hand, tend to center on issues. It's not hard and fast, but it tends to break out that way. So I believe the popularity of the pod space is largely owed to its focus on issues. A shift on talk radio, it's 3 segments, it's 3 hours long. But, the average podcast is also 3 hours long. Now, for some reason, people who aren't acclimated to the podcast world, one of the objections that I hear from people as to why they've never kind of, put a toe in the water is, man, 3 hours, that's really long. Well, but you know what? This show is 3 hours long. So there's really no difference, no appreciable difference there. But I will say this. I believe the popularity, the pod space, is largely owing to its focus on issues. The format lends itself to more expansive deep dives. And unpacking and getting into some things and, maybe some more unique things, maybe, more unique guests, that kind of thing. In talk radio, our tendency is kind of really to crank through the stories of the day. And that's why many of you tune in, and I get that. You know, it's like, catch me up on what's going on. That's a valid thing. And it enables you to take, you know, whatever chunk of your time you want to dedicate to it and stay abreast of what's going on. And I can tell you it's tariffs and deportation. That's what's going on right now. So now you're all caught up.
Over and over and over again.
Over and over. You're caught up now. But since Trump's reelection, which obviously, what an amazing thing. What an amazing moment. What an amazing story. And the moment goes on. And the fact that he hit the ground like Usain Bolt has made it even more amazing. But since his reelection, you know, I think conservatives, clear thinkers, are feeling California, but still kind of looking Minnesota. See, my Soundgarden people know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
there.
sir.
You know, some of the rest of you are going, what? California? What? What's he talking about? But my concern for us as conservatives is that our emphasis on stories tends to make and keep us, if we're not careful, temporal and shallow. And I believe we need to adjust. I really do. You know, if we're not careful, issues can kind of keep us splashing around in a breaking news wading pool. And frankly, on a week like this one, where it's, you know, tariffs and deportations, you know, we keep splashing that same water. See, I believe we need to spend more time deep diving in the ocean. I mean, that's again, I believe that's what's caused the rise of podcasting. Deep dives, you know, expansiveness. Here's an example. You know, one of my favorites, although lately, and I'm going to say this, Tucker Carlson is one of my favorites, if not my favorite. But here's the deal. Tucker, and let me say this, I became aware of, you know, as a lot of, you know, podcasters and talk folks do, I became aware of nicotine pouches because they're kind of like brain super fuel and they're really helpful in terms of kind of, you know, getting things kind of, you know, moving and creating clarity. And so I first heard Tucker talk about, and at the time it was, well, they're not an advertiser, but I'm going to mention them. This thing called Zyn, this product called Zyn. But since then, and partially because of, you know, politics and some things he found out about them that he didn't like, he has started his own brand. So Tucker has a brand of nicotine pouches called Alp. Now, one of the unique things about Alp...
Like Alp, like the mountains?
Yeah, like the mountains. Alp, A-L-P. So, you know, most of the other brands, they're like in 4 and 6 milligram varieties. Tucker came out with Alp, and they came out with a 9 milligram. Because, you know, he knew what he was after. So I will say this, you know, long story longer. I will say this, you know, there's an old saying in the drug game, you know, a good businessman should never be sampling his own product. I think that Tucker really pops a lot of his own pouches. So the thing I've noticed since they came out with Alp is that sometimes my man is just like wound up. I mean, wound up. So, but he is my favorite. So we're going to continue on with this and get deeper into this topic here in a minute. Radio, talk radio versus podcasting. And it's an interesting, timely, and important subject. And it's really important that we talk about this. So we're coming up on another break. A lot of stuff we want to talk about coming back from the break. I want to hear that Sly thing. Sly popped in for a minute and then went away. We're going to have to come back to that. But we'll be back. Dez Dickerson, 99.7, Super Talk 99.7. We'll be back in just a minute.
One o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Drivers got a couple of issues out there. Looks like police reporting a crash 40 eastbound at Fessler's Lane. And then on the East Bank, we've got a crash reported by police. This is going to be on Shelby Avenue near I-24. Terrifying encounter with wildlife in East Tennessee. The Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency says a woman was bitten and then dragged from her home by a black bear last night in Sevier County. They were the same bears that officials say broke into a vehicle loaded with groceries the week before. Now, officials say an adult female bear and 2 yearlings had to be put down because relocation is not a viable option in cases like this. Bears getting increasingly bold and eventually attacking humans. Just got an update on the injured from yesterday's mass shooting at Florida State University.
All 6 were in stable condition upon arrival. 3 of them did go to the operating room and have since been out of the operating room. All 6 of them today are in stable condition. One which is in fair condition given a serious injury.
As Dr. Brett Howard, trauma surgeon there at Tallahassee Memorial.
3 of them did go to the operating room and have since been out of the operating room. All 6 of them today are in stable condition. One which is in fair condition given a serious injury. We do feel that all will make a full recovery.
Officials working on identifying a motive. The suspected gunman, 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, now in custody, the stepson of a local sheriff's deputy. Here's Brad Garrett, ABC News contributor, former FBI agent, on what investigators are looking for.
Despite the fact you may look okay on the surface, there'll be cracks in his behavior that they're going to find. For example, depression and loneliness are the 2 keys to most of these mass shooters.
Alleged MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia was suspected of human trafficking. Fox News claims it's in a Homeland Security investigations report from 2022 it has obtained. Fox News says the report states that official law enforcement investigations revealed that Garcia was a member of MS-13, which President Trump has designated as a terrorist organization. President Trump had this to say about Maryland U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen's trip to El Salvador yesterday to meet with Garcia, demanding his release.
He's a fake. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Oh yeah, I don't know why I can't resist it. I hate when I do that, but at the same time I can't resist it. Dez Dickerson in for Chad Benson, rolling into our second hour today. And Belle was telling me earlier about Chad's like work schedule. I mean, he's the hardest working man in show business.
Yeah, he literally doesn't sleep.
I mean, my man's got like 18 different shows, and it's impressive to me because I'm at a stage in life. I mean, I love this, the opportunity to come back in and you know, be in front of this microphone is it's a joy to me. And honestly, it's work, but it doesn't feel like work. But at this stage in my life, I don't want to be working all that hard. You know what I mean? There's some folks. I mean, you know, even Sean Hannity, soundbite Sean Hannity, my man, you know, does radio all day and then does TV at night, and I just get tired thinking about it. You know, I want to come in, I want to hit it hard. You know what I mean? And I want to leave it all on the field, and then, you know, come back the next day, or in my case, the next year. And, you know, I like to roll that way. And it's one of those things I think that as we get older, don't get it twisted, and I'm not old, I'm older. You know, you want to, I years ago, man, it was a point of pride. I put in 14, 16-hour days, and then it occurred to me after a while, you know, I would rather get more done, hit it hard, get more done in 4 hours than most people get done in 8, because it's about the productivity. It's not about the hours. So anyway, that's my soapbox for the beginning of hour number 2. So I was talking about Tucker Carlson went off on the tangent of ALP. And see, ALP, okay. And I'm just going to stay on this for a minute. There are actually like 3 different pouch brands that I use, and it's like first thing in the early in the day, you know, ALP, because it's like supercharged. That 9 milligrams gets you going, and then middle of the day I'll switch to this other brand, and then late afternoon I switch to another one that's kind of, you know, more mellow, and it kind of carries you into the evening. But Tucker, okay, so he was, I was listening to one of his podcasts the other day, and he was talking to, interviewing a Silicon Valley guy. And one of the things I love is that he has guests that, you know, are not the run-of-the-mill. He doesn't have the usual suspects. And he has a lot of Silicon Valley guys on. And they're not the folks, for the most part, they're not the folks that you're familiar with. You've heard their names, et cetera, but they're all really interesting. So this particular guy was very unique. He was extremely knowledgeable and articulate, as most of them are. But he was also grounded, and that's rare. That's rare with these guys. And this particular gentleman's wheelhouse is AI. But he spoke of it in a broader context than we usually hear from tech folks. You know, understandable, not, you know, like way out in the stratosphere somewhere. And also not, you know, in one ditch or the other in terms of, oh, it's wonderful and, you know, it's going to improve all our lives, to we're all going to be dead in 3 years, and, you know, everything in between. So this guy talked about a study, and again, the guy was very, very knowledgeable on the topic of AI, but in a broad sense. He talked about a study by an educator, a teacher, concluding that the best way to get students to maximum results, any student, is through one-on-one teaching. Which, you know, is kind of like, well, duh. You know, one-on-one teaching, one-on-one tutoring, yeah, you're going to have the opportunity to excel in that setting. That's why a lot of people homeschool, for that matter. But he came to the conclusion that because that's the best way to get to maximum results with every student that the best thing, his suggestion, was that we use AI to teach all kids, everybody, everywhere, globally, so that you have your own personal AI tutor wherever you are, Bangladesh, Bangor, Maine, doesn't matter. So here's the problem with that. Oh, and there are a couple of impracticalities to that, but after all, dude's a teacher. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the most, practical man on the block. And if you're a teacher, don't get offended. I'm just keeping it real. So the problem with that is that the vast majority of Silicon Valley is at best sort of value vacant. And he said, I thought this was really interesting because Tucker asked the question, kind of expecting a different answer. But this guy said, because Tucker asked him, well, how many in Silicon Valley, in your experience, how many folks are there that, have some spiritual grounding and that kind of thing? And this dude said that he can count on one hand those that he knows personally that have any spiritual or moral depth at all. And that was kind of a shock. I mean, that kind of freaked Tucker out. That's not the answer he was expecting. So here's the thing, that lack of shared reality, spiritual truth and standard means that the issue becomes, if you're going to say, okay, every kid on planet Earth should have their own AI teacher. If you're going to do that, who's setting the baseline for what's taught and how? Because somebody's doing that. I mean, we can surmise that, well, the AI is going to figure it out. Well, I don't think that's a good idea either. Somebody is doing the programming. Somebody's going to decide what's taught and how it's taught, what the fundamentals are going to be, what the principles are going to be. So if you look at the shift that we've seen, culturally, societally, over the last 40 years, from a shared moral and civil framework to one lacking in the same. I mean, because there was a time, not really all that long ago, where, you would have folks that were, church-going on Sunday people and kind of had the same values, stood for the national anthem, put their hats over their hearts, and even folks that would say, well, I'm not really religious, but they shared a moral framework and they still believed in the same basic principles. Not that long ago. And see, that needs to be a central concern when you start talking about, let's have AI teach everybody. Well, hold on a minute. We need to think that through for sure. And again, this is just what this one educator thought, and it's an interesting and novel idea. But so this is one of the reasons I believe both conservatives and Christians, and oftentimes tend to be one and the same, need to know more and engage more where AI is concerned. We need to know more and we need to engage more where AI is concerned, not just a surface knowledge or understanding. See, it's not just an issue of staying informed, but it's an issue of being cognizant and being fairly well-versed. And I'm going to try to get through this end of the segment before we get to the break. So I'm going to push it here a little.
You're fine. You got time.
Cool. So again, we need to know and be fluent so we can establish and maintain both influence and impact in this and in other areas. Like I said, we're feeling California, man. It's the Gilded Age, but we're still kind of looking at Minnesota. So we need to know more than how to say AI. We need to know what it is. We need to know what's being done with it. And we need to know how to be active in applying it, or more specifically, how other people are active in applying it. And not just fear it on the one hand or look at it one-dimensionally in terms of, it's going to put me out of a job or it's going to make my job easier or, there's a lot of talk of, well, yeah, it's like other eras in Western history. There are going to be, jobs that go away. There are going to be industries that are impacted, but you just, you retool, you retrain. And for a lot of people, this has been said that, well, what it's going to mean is you're going to have more spare time. So you can develop other interests and, whatever. And all of this is conjecture is great, but it's still conjecture. So it's okay for us to be feeling California right now, but we just need to make sure that we're not looking Minnesota. We got to go deeper. And that relates back to this. Let's kind of get out of the waiting pool some. Let's be people who are versed in both stories and issues. Let's take this opportunity in this new gilded age to be new gilded clear thinkers that are broader and deeper and more expansive. Let's do that because we got a prime opportunity to do it. We got the ball, people. We got the ball. So let's make the most of it. We're going to go ahead and take a break now. It's, again, Dez Dickerson with you today. In for Chad Benson on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Talking about important stuff. We're going to be back in just a minute. Okay. Cool.
Dr. Oz, officially a member of the Trump administration, and we have a story of a botched butt implant removal that turned deadly coming up at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
See, some things are just meant not to be messed with.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Just leave God's handiwork alone.
Absolutely, dude.
Because, the last thing you want folks to be talking about, at your graveside is, well, unfortunately, we lost her way too soon, because her backside blew up or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the memory that we want to leave people with. So
A tiny tushy is not that great of a burden.
No, I mean, live proudly with what you got. That's the best advice I can give you.
Yeah, this story might send some people that direction. I'm telling you, man.
Oh Lord! And see, here's the way it is. It's always this way, been this way throughout the ages, and because it'll cycle and matriculate from, cultural era to cultural era. So there was a time, go back to the 60s and Twiggy, and, every woman wanted to weigh about 12 pounds and look like a number 2 pencil.
Yeah.
And then, you fast forward to like the J-Lo era, and, every woman wanted to have a serious following, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And bottom line
Something
is,
to seriously follow.
yeah, there you go. So bottom line is you got what you got, and, just wave your freak flag high, whatever that may be. So, I keep coming back to this. I'm thinking about this. Not making guarantees, but I'm thinking about it in the third hour today. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines, and, we might take some calls and have some fun that way. We might just get buck wild in the third hour. I don't know. We'll see when we get there. But serious segment right now that I want to start. One of the stories, speaking of stories, that is talked about most often currently is DEI. And one of the interesting aspects of it is that really it's both a story and an issue. There are opportunities for us to unpack the issue in relationship to the topic. So Doge has brought attention to a massive amount of pointless DEI spending. I mean, we had no idea at the federal level. A massive amount of spending. Crazy amount. I mean, it's interesting, you hear some different sound bites and interviews with Elon, and he was surprised and blown away at the sheer volume of waste, fraud, and abuse. But this is one of the areas where there are just boatloads of money that change hands, et cetera. So we can get distracted, though, by like the shiny object of the massive numbers, because they are massive numbers. We can get, distracted by that. And, honestly, maybe even a little freaked out by it. So I want to talk about it from the standpoint of, I saw a clip the other day. Senator Rick Scott of Florida was grilling someone in a Senate hearing about China. And his focus was getting the American people to just stop buying Chinese goods. Don't you think it would be best if we just got people to stop buying Chinese goods? And I mean, he's really hyper-focused on that as being our solution in dealing with China. I mean, he thinks that that's the ticket. See, I'm sure to him, it seems like the magic solution. If we all just stop buying anything made in China, then we'll bring the CCP to their knees. she will, cry no mas. And that would be awesome. I mean, if that were possible, that'd be awesome. Just like it'd be awesome if I could borrow, Iron Man's suit and start playing football again. That'd be awesome. Not likely, though. See, we can't use CGI to cripple the Chinese and bring them to their knees. It's kind of a fantasy land thing. So, any politicians advocating China shunning, in my opinion, is totally unrealistic and would be totally ineffective. The amount of coordinated buy-in from we the people that it would take to effectively move the needle in this, it's not the real world. It would take a broad and sustained focus on the part of the populace to pull that off, to even come close to pulling that off. And an unprecedented level of participation. Just the sheer numbers of people that would have to participate on a sustained basis in order for that to really make the difference. I just don't think it's real world. So call me cynical, and a lot of people do. I don't see mass numbers of patriots all giving up their cheap stuff en masse long enough for it to work. Now, I do believe clear thinkers should use the power of the crowd far more often and far more strategically than we do. I mean, the left lines up in lockstep on even stupid things. They'll get in the lemming line and march over the cliff for anything. Now, that's the other ditch, but see, we're too busy, on the right, quote unquote, we're too busy being independent iconoclasts. And that's, part of how we have our self-concept kind of formed around that. So I said on this station well over a couple of years ago, as another example, that we needed to recognize that Disney was abusing what has been its core audience for decades. From the beginning, families, and storytelling for families. See, instead of recognizing and responding, though, at the time, Disney boss Bob Iger took the company in an increasingly woke direction. And this was so long ago, I mean, woke wasn't really even a thing yet. Folks had just started kind of utilizing that term. And there were not only indications of a bolder push into using Disney content to, quote unquote, influence the culture, but, Iger himself said it out loud at a stockholder meeting in 2017. And, that was a minute ago. That was 8 years ago? He told investors, we can take those values which we deem important societally and actually change people's behavior. Well, I don't think that's Disney's job. Get people to be more accepting of the multiple differences and cultures and races and all other facets of our lives and our people. And in the years since, Disney's worked ardently to socially engineer the audience that Iger feels it deserves. Yeah, almost like it's some sort of, sacred duty. Now, at that time, I was pointing out not so subtle changes in iconic Disney brands, from Star Wars to, more esoteric brands like Doctor Who Disney picked up, nudging us into conditioning through incorporating sexually ambiguous characters and woke themes to more overt ones than that. And the Doctor Who thing especially, because that's a long time multi-generational favorite at our house. You know, my wife, who's actually 20 years younger than me, and myself, we used to watch like the original back in the 60s, and it was cheesy special effects and bad acting. And it's developed and grown over the years into this great, sophisticated, well-written, high production values kind of thing, but very unique theme, very unique, kind of just a great show. And, that was when Disney acquired it, man. They started messing with it. So I'm going to jump back in with this after the break because, again, remember, we're talking about DEI now. And I'm going to fold this back into that topic. But Dez Dickerson with you, Super Talk 99.7, WTN. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. Dr. Mehmet Oz has been sworn in as administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Congratulated by President Trump, who says Dr. Oz will do great things under his new role. No benefit cuts.
As CMS Administrator, Dr. Oz will work tirelessly to strengthen and protect Medicare for our nation's seniors and Medicaid for the needy. Just as I promised, there will be no cuts. We're not going to have any cuts. We're going to have only help.
And a federal judge in Washington blocking hundreds of layoffs planned for tonight at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a regulatory agency that the Trump White House and its DOJ team have aimed to shut down. Here's Stephen Portnoy.
The reduction in force of nearly 1,500 agency employees was due to take effect tonight, but Judge Amy Berman Jackson has ordered an immediate halt to the plan. A previous order she issued only allowed for firings based on particularized assessments of each employee's performance. Judge Jackson told government lawyers tonight's planned firings are not going to happen. Several agency workers on hand for the hearing broke into tears as it ended.
Here in Tennessee, wildlife regulators say 3 bears, a mama bear and 2 yearlings, had to be put down after a woman was attacked at her home in Sevier County last night in East Tennessee. The woman was bitten and dragged from her porch just a week after one of the bears had broken into a car full of groceries on the property. This woman's going to be okay, but officials say they had to kill the bears because they were getting bolder and bolder to the point of last night's attack. Plastic surgeons who promise the world for very little money can not only leave you scarred, in some cases their actions can be fatal.
A 31-year-old woman from Queens has died a month after undergoing what she thought was going to be a routine butt implant removal. Maria Penaloza went into cardiac arrest and was declared brain dead as a result of the botched procedure. The man who performed it, allegedly injecting lidocaine through a syringe, wasn't a plastic surgeon at all and had no medical license. He'll be in court later this month. Police say the investigation into exactly what happened is ongoing. Sherry Preston, ABC News, New York.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Yes, indeed. We're back. So I was talking about Doctor Who, talking about Disney. And for those of you who aren't familiar, and man, I highly recommend it, especially going back to some of the older episodes, not all the way back to the 60s, because that's an acquired taste. But Doctor Who is a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey. And he is the last of his kind. Time Lords are very unique, human-looking, but they have two hearts, and they just have super intelligence, etc. So, Doctor Who was always just this great character, and one of the great sort of labor mechanisms that the BBC employed is that the Doctor, every couple of seasons or so, he would regenerate, and it would be the same Doctor, but
looked like a completely different person.
Exactly.
And accidentally became a woman one time.
Yeah, that was 2 years that we didn't watch the show because it wasn't a sexist thing. It just didn't work. But it had to be great from a labor perspective because no need to renegotiate. You just plug somebody else in, and here we go.
What? How much money? Oh no, we're gonna have to get somebody else to do this.
We're gonna get a woman to take the bar now. So what they did though when Disney acquired it. First of all, they brought back a guy named Russell Davies, who was the most successful showrunner and writer in kind of the history of the show, thinking that was going to bring it back to its glory days. But here's what they did, though. They regenerated the Doctor into this, well, first of all, like a black dude, like Nigerian or something. And they regenerated him into this, like, swishy, clearly bisexual Time Lord, which again, it's like, okay, we're kind of missing the ethos of the original concept. And other more secondary characters were taken in even more disturbing directions. There was one villainess who was, this sort of clearly trans whatever, and it was like, what in the world? So all that to say this, what was happening then, it was clear that Iger was going further and doubling down on the direction he'd been taking the company in. So at that time, I issued a call to action that we need clear thinkers. We need to focus our efforts on our dollars, like the streams that the guys had in Ghostbusters cross the streams. We need to focus and combine forces, but that never really materialized. Now, obviously, I'm one substitute host on one station, but I would have thought surely I'm not the only one seeing this. So, as so often is the case with conservatives, there was lots of griping and complaining about Disney and hand-wringing, but little to no coordination or organizing. So fast forward to 2025 and Snow White. And in the interim, they've continued, with a series of famously woke box office flops. And I'm not going to name them all, but I'm just film after film where, well, let's take The Little Mermaid and make her black. And just all these things. Why can't you just tell the story? So Disney defiantly continued on this same path and seemingly kept doubling down. Well, Snow White has been the sort of the non-princess that has broken the mouse's back. This time they went a bridge too far. And as a result, the budget for the film, and these budgets are usually inclusive of marketing, et cetera, but the budget for the film was $240 million, which, for big budget bills or films, that's, kind of the neighborhood. But it's only done $40 million at the box office. I mean, do the math. That's a flop in any language. That's just a massive, leaking money like a sieve, flop. So obviously, radically changing both the plot and the characters didn't help. And there was early word, when the movie was in production, that the dwarves weren't going to be dwarves and there was going to be no prince. Woo! That Snow White was going to be, she wanted to be kind of a boss babe, and they just completely wrecked this classic traditional story.
It's amazing how they will take something that they think has a built-in audience because of its history and then change it up so much that the history doesn't even matter anymore, but you're still trying to sell it based on that.
Yeah, you've made it unrecognizable, but you're still trying to sell it based on it being what it used to be that it's not anymore. Just stupid. That's just obviously stupid. And I continuously wonder, why does Bob Iger still have a job? But I digress. So, fortunately, Disney's continued decline is owing to their stupid refusal to change course. Now, it could have been more influenced by collective financial pressure from conservatives and Christians had we taken the obvious opportunity. It was a gopher ball over the middle of the plate, and what were we doing? See, you would have thought that the spontaneous Bud Light uprising of a few years ago, it would have caused the collective conservative light to go on. But nope, didn't happen. With the Bud Light thing, we cheered it. We applauded it. We all bought Dos Equis instead. I mean, others as well. And then kind of watched it eventually die like, the wave at a football game in the late 80s. It just died. And then eventually they started making moves after they bled money profusely for a long time. And then they started doing things like, let's throw a bunch of money at Peyton Manning, who certainly isn't on TV enough. And they turned the brand around finally on the basis of making some moves that kind of won people back over. But see, we have more opportunities now than ever to be focused, intentional, and strategic. Again, Doge is shining a big light, showing us the way. One example of this, I believe, is Costco, who have become a big box retail version of Disney, in my opinion. Now, President Trump issued an executive order on DEI immediately after his inauguration. Here's what he said. Americans deserve a government committed to serving every person with equal dignity and respect, and to expending precious taxpayer resources only on making America great. Now, the order also encouraged private companies to follow suit, leading to a reevaluation of DEI initiatives in both public and private organizations. But here's the thing, Costco not only did not comply, they doubled down. And the retail giant continues to uphold its DEI programs. They've stayed full speed ahead. So their policies include fostering, and I'm quoting, fostering an inclusive corporate culture, employ a workplace that reflects our communities, achieve racial parity in average compensation, increase Black representation in management, increase diversity and racial equity. There you go, equity and inclusion. Invest in advancing racial equity in, racial equity in our workplaces. Man, I mean, that's the stuff. It's a lot of nothing burger and a lot of stuff that on the surface of it to a lot of people, well, that doesn't sound like a bad thing. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come back in and continue diving deeper into this because this is important, because this is something that instead of, just look in Minnesota, there's something we can do. And we can learn from the Bud Light thing and we can take similar action. So we're going to take a break. Dez Dickerson with you on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Talking about DEI rather. We're going to be right back.
The Trump administration says it has begun releasing the records on Senator Robert F. Kennedy's 1968 assassination. This story and more at 2 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right. So in the little bit of time we got between now and the top of the hour, I'm going to keep kind of diving into this DEI issue. And, you know, Belle, I think after the top of the hour, I'm going to want to open the phone lines. And, you know, we may take calls, we may not. I mean, I might be capricious about it. I don't know. We'll see. But in January, the company, Costco's board of directors, recommended against voting for a proposal from the National Center for Public Policy Research, which would have evaluated and published a report of risk associated with the company's DEI efforts. And this is from ABC News. This isn't from like Breitbart. The National Center for Public Policy Research alleged that at least 200,000 of the company's 300,000 employees worldwide, quote, are potentially victims of this type of illegal discrimination because they're white, Asian, male, or straight. Now, if only a fraction of those employees were to sue Costco, the legal costs could be significant, the center said. So Costco, interestingly, has a chief diversity officer. But the company's executive ranks do not reflect the diversity of its customers. Nearly 81% of the executives Costco had in place last year were white. 72% of them were men, according to data published on its own website. So they said members of Costco's management company typically stay a long time, given the company's solid and stable financial performance. So I understand the issues that they seem to address with their DEI stance. Because here's the thing, man. You know what? I've been black a long time. And I've encountered obvious racial biases and roadblocks firsthand in years gone by in a different time. For example, I came to town in 1990. I was hired as a VP in the Christian record industry then. And at that time, counting myself, there were only 2 black VPs in the entire industry. Count them. 2. So looking at it on the surface, there was a woeful lack of racial diversity in Christian music. In addition to what I've cited, there were no black executives above the VP level. No executive VPs, no C-suite, no nothing. So with that said, there was a problem that should have been recognized. However, it should have been addressed on the basis of merit, and I'm going to close with this before we get to the hard break. Merit, not race. Someone should have said, hey, we got nothing but white folks here. Let's make an effort to identify and hire the best non-white candidates we can. Candidates, period. But if we can find some non-white candidates that qualify on the basis of excellence, man, let's prioritize them. Let's hire them. So, hard break, top of the hour. We're going to finish this up when we come back from the break. Like I said, we're going to open the phone lines. May take some calls, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see if I'm feeling, California. And Dez Dickerson, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll be back with you in a minute.
Two o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. The Trump administration says it has started releasing records on Senator Robert F. Kennedy's 1968 assassination, which will contain roughly 10,000 pages of previously classified records. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard says these records will be published with limited redactions for privacy reasons, such as to shield Social Security numbers. CBS News says the documents released so far appear to include Justice Department and FBI memos, as well as photos of evidence collected during the investigation, clippings from news reports, and handwritten notes. Inside the White House this morning,
I, Mehmet Oz, do solemnly swear.
I, Mehmet Oz, do solemnly swear.
President Trump participated in the swearing-in ceremony of Dr. Mehmet Oz as the administrator for the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services.
As CMS administrator, Dr. Oz will work tirelessly to strengthen and protect Medicare for our nation's seniors and Medicaid for the needy. Just as I promised, there will be no cuts. We're not going to have any cuts. We're going to have only help.
Well, a lot of families in Middle Tennessee got some bad news today. Channel 4 says Saks Global Tennessee Fulfillment Center in Laverne plans to lay off more than 400 employees at its Rutherford County Fulfillment Center. Layoffs start June 4th, with about 446 employees being laid off by November 30th. In Vatican City today, Good Friday services where U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his family were visiting for the Easter weekend. Notably absent from the service, Pope Francis, who is still recovering from his February hospitalization with pneumonia. He'll have limited involvement in this weekend's celebrations. An overnight house party in Nashville turned into the scene of a shooting in the Bordeaux neighborhood early this morning. Police say a fight broke out at the home on Ashland City Highway shortly after midnight. That's when people started running from the house. News 2 picks it up from there.
This is when two people hopped into two separate vehicles and started firing at one another, leaving nearly a dozen shell casings spread out at the scene. Now, this morning, we are learning one woman was caught in that crossfire.
Yeah, she has critical injuries. She's expected to recover. No arrests. And the search is on for a motive after police say the stepson of a sheriff's deputy killed 2 people and injured 6 others at Florida State University yesterday. Third-year student Mackenzie Heater telling ABC News she was just feet away from the suspect when he started shooting.
I noticed he was waving around a bigger rifle. That's when he shot the rifle, and I was just confused. Like, was that really just a shot? And that's when I noticed him go in his car and pull out the handgun and then shoot that woman.
Police say they shot the gunman after he ignored repeated commands to drop his weapon. The campus there in Tallahassee is in shock even today. However, doctors who have been helping the 6 injured victims say they will all recover. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
I want to know who's going to get me through the second half of my day. No, let it play. Let it play. I was just being a knucklehead. See, that's what gets me through the second half of my day right there. 5-string guitars tuned to drop D. That's what gets me through my day. So I'm going to, continue on in this and finish this up here at the top of this, finish this segment at the top of the hour. So Costco, like all organizations who embrace DEI, they've taken a wrong-headed approach. That's what's wrong with DEI. The issue should never be hiring or not hiring on the basis of extrinsic characteristics, skin color, ethnicity, racial preference, whatever. Shouldn't be any of that. It should be merit. Merit. One thing and one thing only. Who's the best person for the job? Who's going to bring the greatest and highest level of value to this organization? That's all that should matter. So, and quick, not really disclaimer, but reminder. If you've listened to me in the past, you know that I'm an equal opportunity offender. I'm not worried about hurting anybody's feelings. I'm just telling you the truth. So, right now, for a second now, and don't get butt sore about it, I'm going to get on my white people for just a minute. So here's what I believe is perhaps the biggest impediment to us as clear thinkers, as conservatives and Christians, applying strategic economic pressure, like the Bud situation, to influencing Costco toward changing their DEI stance. See, here's the challenge. Suburban white folks love Costco. You know it's true. You know it's true. Love Costco. And I understand why. For years, we had memberships at both, Costco and Sam's Club because there were certain products that were just better at Costco. But, kind of like girly men love Crocs, white folks love Costco. So as a result, there's likely a built-in and even unconscious resistance among its core customer base to rocking the boat. An unconscious resistance to it. Because it's a constituency that in the past, remember the Obama years, has feared appearing to be racist. Good people. You're not racist. But they fear appearing to be. That's how Obama got elected. Folks wanted to prove they weren't racist. Silly. But man, you'd be amazed at how many white friends I've talked to in the intervening years that, I voted for Obama because now, first of all, how the heck is that going to prove that you're not racist? Stupid. But so, however, with that said, it's a much more doable, much more achievable approach in terms of application of direct economic pressure on a brand to do this. Because they would feel the pain quickly, much more so than everybody stopped buying Chinese stuff. Put the pressure on Costco. How? Cancel your membership. We could Bud Light the crap out of Costco. It's simple. Cancel your membership and go to Sam's. Get a membership at Sam's. Walmart, its parent company, has already dumped DEI in response to a grassroots pressure campaign. It was actually led by, a guy here in Middle Tennessee, a guy named Robbie Starbuck. I don't know him. I understand. I know he moved here from, Southern California in the great blue state diaspora of 2018, 2019, something like that. Try to get involved in politics. Folks here are a little bit leery of that. But, he single-handedly, apparently, led the charge and got Walmart to change. So here's the thing. Once this works, everybody cancel your membership, just like everybody stopped buying Bud Light once it works, and it will. Continue employing the strategy by identifying and targeting other possible DEI advocates among consumer brands and products. And just do it again. Just go through the list and just do it again. Because it's doable. And we have to start. I'm issuing this call to action because we have to start taking some, I hate to use the term, some affirmative action in changing things, not just sitting back and waiting for somebody else to do it, not just waiting back and waiting for President Trump to sign another executive order or for Elon to do it. You got to do it. We got to do it. All God's children got to do it. That's what I'm talking about. So I mentioned that we were going to open the phone lines. And I know, Bill, I know you hate this because he's got to answer the phone. And, you know, that entails weeding through some interesting folks. But here's the thing. We're going to open it. Maybe we'll take calls, maybe not. Tell him who you are and what it is you want to talk about. And then, you know, I'll decide if it's something that interests me.
Have you ever met Robbie Starbuck?
I never have.
We got to get you guys together. You have a lot in common, both with backgrounds in the music industry and now conservative pundits and putting a kind of, I think the two of you would hit it off.
I'd love to meet him. Maybe the next time I'm back in May, maybe we can have him in and we can do a thing then. But I'd love to. And it's so funny, man. People move here and then, you know, there are all these people that, oh, man, I should connect with them. I mean, there are all sorts of people. You know, Candace and what's his name? Jason and all sorts of other people I've never met. And you know, people would think, well, certainly you guys connected. No, it's the town is weird that way. Even friends, even people in the music business I've known for years. You know, once we all end up moving here, we never see each other and never talk to each other again. It's a weird thing. But at any rate, you know what? I'm going to pull something up here because there
was a while when I was doing record promotion that all the promotion reps in Dallas felt like we had to go on the road to end up bumping into each other.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? It's just weird how that happens. So, you know, I would love to do that. Let's look to do that when I'm back in May. So, and you know, I give all my segments titles. I don't necessarily talk about them, but this one, I like it. So, Weezer wife busts a cap. Weezer wife.
And gets busted back.
And gets busted back. So, when my oldest son was 10 years old, we helped him start a tweener pop punk band called Squirt. Now, you know, the term tweener wasn't even a thing then, but the original idea came about. I was in L.A. and driving back to the hotel one night, and I saw this Got Milk billboard. Remember that campaign, Got Milk? Brilliant campaign, really. But it had these three, like, punk-looking kids, you know, probably 10, 11 years old, and they all had milk mustaches, you know, looking kind of, you know, suburban menacing kind of. And you know, the simple caption on all those billboards was "Got Milk," and I thought, man, that would make a cool band. That would really make a cool band. So, my son and his guys had been in the studio finishing up their first full record. They'd released an EP, and so we're doing what everybody does when you complete a record, whatever age you are. And we started rehearsing for the tour. Because, I mean, they were in teen magazines. They were blowing up. So the guys were like 10, 11, and 12. And, you know, they were musicians, so they had their own kind of favorite bands, you know, that they would talk about. And obviously, I would pay attention because it's important, you know, to be tuned into those things. And it ranged from, like, you know, Korn to Weezer, which, you know, 11-year-olds that were into Korn at the time, that was like, okay, well, that's intense. But I I actually liked both bands. But the really poppy Weezer thing, and this was early on for them, it seemed like, to me, something that could really be big. So now here's the funny thing. Funny thing is that I'm friends with a few of the guys in Korn now, and we and we're all older. We're all older now, but love those guys. So fast forward, my son that was 10 then, he's now 38 and married and has 2 kids, and he's a supply chain logistics exec with a Chinese company, actually, but it's family-owned, Christian family, not your CCP kind of thing. And the Weezer guys, check this out, they're pushing 60. The Weezer guys, Buddy Holly is pushing 60. So, but they're back in the news, but in a very un-Weezer kind of way. The wife of the bass player was recently charged with attempted murder. And I'm going to read a little bit from a story in the Blaze about it, because this is like, what? So police have leveled new accusations against the wife of Weezer bassist Scott Schreiner, saying Lillian Lauren Schreiner shot at them during an unrelated search for hit-and-run suspects last week in L.A. The California Highway Patrol requested police backup to locate 3 hit-and-run suspects who had fled from an alleged crime scene around 3:25 p.m. Tuesday. The suspects reportedly ran from the crash site into the neighborhood of Eagle Rock, which I'm sure was not the projects. So Schreiner, a 51-year-old best-selling author, I mean, everybody's a best-selling author. Honestly, I've never heard of her. It doesn't mean anything, 'cause I may not be paying attention. And the wife of Weezer bassist allegedly exited her home while police officers were searching for the 3 suspects. Police said Schreiner was armed with a handgun. Police allegedly ordered Schreiner to drop her weapon multiple times, quote unquote, multiple times, but she reportedly refused to put down her firearm. The officers ordered her to drop the handgun multiple times, however, she refused, according to the police report. Schreiner then pointed the handgun at the officers, and an officer-involved shooting occurred. I don't know, but I saw that story, and I just thought it cracked me up. Now, it's not funny, and I don't know what in the world she was thinking at the time, but here's the thing that's the funniest. All this is going on, and the story goes on and gives more details. All this is going on, and my man's getting ready to go out and play Coachella. It's like, hey, babe, let me know how this whole attempted murder thing goes, and I'll talk to you when I get back. Woo. But anyway, interesting how things change. So we're going to take a break. We got someone holding, so we're going to take a call. When we get back, call in, speak now or forever hold your peace. And again, Dez Dickerson with you. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And we'll be right back.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying the U.S. may move on from efforts to try to end the war in Ukraine. NASA going to do a flyby of a small asteroid this weekend. These stories and more at 2:30 on Super Talk and 99.7 WTN.
Yeah, thank you for letting me be myself again, WTN Nation. Feels good. Took a minute to get rolling, but feels good.
Did you ever jam with Sly?
You know what? I never did. I never. Now, here's the thing. I know Larry Graham, who actually was as much a part of the Sly sound as anybody. Larry was the bass player. He kind of invented that whole thumping and plucking thing. But one time, we did some reunion shows together back the year that Prince passed away. Mm-hmm. And, a number of people came out just to pay respects and hang out. And Larry was one of them. And, hung all night in the dressing room with us. One of the most surreal moments of my life. We just spontaneously started singing If You Want Me to Stay. And it was one of those things where we started, and first you're just, you're into the fact of singing this song that you love. And then it struck me, holy crap. I'm singing this song with Larry Graham right now. But anyway. And here's the thing, the Metallica thing, man, I would love to go see him. Bella and I were talking earlier. I mean, I don't like leaving the house.
It's got to be a really, really good reason.
Really, really. Hey, man, Hendrix and Janis Joplin are at the,
Jesus is here and would like a meeting.
Yep, because other than that, dude, I got a remote and I'm staying home. And, when you're younger, just any excuse. And you'll just go out and be out all night.
Yeah.
And now I look at that as just utter foolishness. I'm not.
Your 20s, you're up for anything. Your 30s, it's like, well, I'll go, but I'm driving myself.
That's right.
And by the time you get to the 40s, it's like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. No, I'm staying home, man. I got some Orville Redenbachers, and I'm good. So anyway, I'd love to see me. And I'll say this too. Limp Bizkit, because they played, Rollin' there in the bumper. I got to say, there came a point that they're a band that quickly fell out of favor, but Rollin' was my jam. I mean, that song, if I hear that, I just heard that little bit and I started bobbing my head because that was my jam.
Yeah, that's just one of those songs that, if you don't like the band, you've got to like the song, though, because it's just a catchy tune.
Got to.
It's just catchy.
Yep, you just got to. So, this. I'm gonna actually let's take a couple calls. We got a couple calls before I move on. So, is that Jimmy? Is that my man, Jimmy? Jimmy, what you got?
Well, I'm originally from Memphis, but I live in Shelbyville right now. I was kind of like a promoter back in the early 60s, late 50s and early 60s. Stax wasn't always Stax. It was the satellite recording studios. Mm. I was there when Stax or satellite recording studios started. Let's see, Al Green walked off the street right into the satellite recording studios, and let's see, all of them that own the recording studios there where Stax was Booker T, and Duck Dunn and Steve Cropper.
Steve's a good dude. I've met Steve. Steve's a good conservative man. Good man.
Yeah. His mother was one that bought that old movie theater. And all the ones that were in the marquees they made the Memphis sound. All the ones in marquees was a lot younger than me. They were still in high school. They were playing out at Millington, Tennessee, at a nightclub out there.
You know, that's the way it used to be back then. Folks just walk off the street into a recording studio and, end up putting records out and becoming huge. But because we got other calls, I want to make sure we get to something. I got a question for you. You were a promoter back in the day, back in the heyday. Who is the artist, the show that you promoted, who went on to be the biggest star? What's the one name that comes to mind?
Oh, I don't know. I guess maybe the Marquis.
That's pretty cool. Because you never know.
I knew them when they were in high school and they were playing out at Millington. I was been in the service and was out, and I was the only one that working and kind of run around with the bunch. But we'd leave Neil's hideaway there in Millington, and I'd buy 4 or 5 cases of long neck bottles of beer.
Hey, I'm up against the break, Jimmy. Great hearing from you. Thanks for calling. We got a couple more folks holding, so hang in there, and we're going to take your calls after the break. It's Dez in for Chad. We'll be right back.
.2:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast in 5 minutes. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying the U.S. may move on from efforts to try to end the war in Ukraine. Here's ABC's Ines De La Cuntara.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio just before leaving Paris.
We're not going to continue to fly all over the world and do meeting after meeting after meeting if no progress is being made. So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on.
Rubio and White House envoy Steve Witkoff were in the French capital to meet with their European counterparts just days after Witkoff met with the Russian president in Moscow. Ines De La Cuntara, ABC News, Paris.
Houthi rebels saying at least 74 people dead, more than 170 injured after U.S. strikes targeted an oil port in Yemen. U.S. Central Command saying it destroyed the port because the Houthis were using it to embezzle profits. And a prison inmate convicted of first-degree murder who escaped from prison last year in Central California is now back in custody, caught in Mexico. Here's Alex Stone.
Escaped killer Cesar Hernandez somehow was able to run away from prison guards while at a courthouse near Fresno last December. While on the run, he allegedly killed Mexican police officer Abigail Reyes during an attempt to arrest him. But on Thursday night, he was captured unarmed near Tijuana. Hernandez was sentenced to life in prison in 2019 for murder in L.A. It's unclear if Mexico will hand him over to the U.S. or try him for the murder of the police officer while he was on the run. Alex Stone, ABC News, Los Angeles.
NASA is going to do a flyby of a small asteroid this weekend. They're sending their Lucy spacecraft to gather data from an asteroid known as Donald Johanson. It's about 139 million miles from Earth in the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Scientists say it's so far away, it's going to take 12 minutes for each piece of data to reach flight controllers back in Colorado. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Love this song. And I'm definitely okay now that it's playing. Love this song. My Chemical Romance. There was a period of time where my son and I both, it was like our favorite band. But you know what? Was that a galaxy called Don Johansson? What was that?
Donald Johansson. It's an asteroid.
An asteroid. Not to be confused with David Johansson.
Right.
Which would be a completely different thing, coincidentally. But anyway, I thought, what in the world?
Yeah, this thing's 2.5 miles long.
Jeez. I don't think we want to get in the way of that.
No.
I think that'd be very bad.
Yeah, apparently this Lucy spacecraft, they launched it in 2021, and its sole mission is to get to the asteroid. There's apparently an asteroid belt around Jupiter, and scientists are wanting to get to some of those rocks and get some information from them.
Wow.
So.
Wow. We need Bruce Willis, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
You may have to settle for Ben Affleck.
I know. And God bless Bruce, because, things happen as we get older.
Yeah.
But at any rate, we got Matthew been holding for a while. Matthew, in my parents' original hometown of Clarksville, Tennessee. Matthew, come on board. What do you got for us?
Hey, I just wanted to first say, hey, it's good to hear you back on. I've missed you.
Well, I've missed me too.
I was just curious, what is your opinion on the current state of ticket prices? My wife and I love going to concerts and small venues, big venues, but we're regular working people, and it has gotten to the point to where we can't afford to go anymore.
You know what? And I hear you. And Kid Rock's on the case, so, it'll be taken care of soon. But in all seriousness, and for me, this has been the case for many years. I'm probably not the best guy to ask because of the fact that years ago I made the decision that, look, if I wasn't on the list, with all access and the full 9, I wasn't going. That was just it. I just wasn't going. And now, like I was saying a few minutes ago, I'm not leaving the house. So unless I'm on the list for, like, again, Hendrix and Joplin are back, I'm not. But I do think that, like so many things, pricing and prices get out of hand, and there's so many hands in the cookie jar, and there's so many people taking their pound of flesh that, it's going to have to equalize, and I don't know what's going to come of, the whole Kid Rock initiative, but I hope, because it's, the people, here's the thing that every artist should understand, especially at that level. You have a great life because of your fans, because, people take their hard-earned money and they buy tickets, and usually it's not just that, dinner, whatever else. And, you are disrespecting your fans by letting this thing become unaffordable. And there have been those artists who've been able to say, you know what? No more Ticketmaster, no more, we're not, because we don't want the fans to get screwed. So I hope that more people step up, and some steps are taken, because, people need to be able to afford to buy themselves and their wife, whatever, a ticket for a show without having to take out a second mortgage to do it.
When I was in my teens, I went to a ton of short shows, and I mean everything from Ozzy to Duran Duran to Frank Zappa to Rush to, I went to see everything, and I was paying $12.50, $13.50 a ticket. Now this is the 80s, so I understand inflation exists, and we're not going to get that same price point. But the last time I bought tickets to go to a show, I bought one ticket for myself. It was $175 to see an arena act.
That's crazy.
It's ridiculous.
That's just stupid. I mean, I go so far back. I started going to shows, a lot of shows, late 70s, when, it was Deep Purple and Grand Funk Railroad, that whole thing. Tickets were like $3.50 a piece. And there was so much touring that was going on. Some weeks there were like 2-3 shows a week.
My old boss at KDF from years ago, there was a Genesis ticket taped to his door.
Wow.
And it was $10. And even back in the 80s, you couldn't even park for $10 anymore, much less buy a concert ticket.
See, it's crazy. And yeah, you know, inflation exists, but no, this has got to change. Daniel in Gallatin, holding for us.
Yes.
Daniel, come on.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Good. Say, our paths have crossed so many times up in the Twin Cities. I don't know if you remember me, but I used to be a manager of Musicland inside of Zaire Shopper City in Maplewood, and you'd come in and buy stacks of records from me. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I got Dez coming in here to buy some music from me. And then I left there and opened up my own record stores. I had 5 of them in the Twin Cities called Music 2.
Yeah.
And I think you came in there and bought some records as well. And that led me to going to a Robert Palmer concert. Jim Wessels was the Warner rep. And he brought me and my buyer there, and we sat next to Prince and his girlfriend. And then you came in. And I thought, oh, my God, Dez was behind me, you know, in this little booth. And Chick was in there. And I think the president of Motown Records was also in that booth. But it was a great concert, and I believe that was probably the last time I saw you, except for we were in the Ramsey County Courthouse, and I think you were defending a landlord-tenant issue, and I was sitting in the courtroom. And
I remember that.
And I
deadbeat son of a...
What was that?
No, the dude was a deadbeat. I had to throw him out.
Oh, yeah, I know. And I wanted to help you out, you know, because I was in law school at the time, and I could have helped you, but I thought, no, God, I can't represent him because I haven't passed the bar yet. But, geez, I thought, man, this is kind of weird from the little Zaire Shopper City Musicland, you know, to the courtroom and then in that concert with Prince and Robert Palmer. That was pretty awesome.
And now on the radio.
And now on the radio.
Yeah, and then to hear you. Yeah, now you're on the radio. I thought, wow, that's a huge transition to go from, you know, this awesome musician, you know, with Prince's band to now you're on the talk radio. I thought, man, I got to call in.
All right. Well, you know, I mean, Shopper City was the bomb. I mean, it was kind of in the area where I had grown up and, you know, gone to high school. So I used to, even before I could drive, I'd have my mom, if she was going, you know, shopping, I'd have her drop me off and I'd go in the record department. But, yeah, back then, you know, in the Twin Cities, you never knew who was going to roll up, and it was the place to be and, you know, that whole thing. But time goes on. I'm digging this more now, to be honest. I love what I do, and I'd love to do more of it. So, okay, now somebody keeps calling in and then hanging up. You know, don't punk us like that. If you're going to call in, you know, you got to persevere. So, and we're kind of in that no man's land. How close are we to break, Bill?
Oh, we still got a good bit of time left, like 5 minutes.
Because here's the deal. This is third hour kind of no man's land. It's too late for me to crack open another story. And, you know.
No, it's never too late for a Dez Dickerson story.
Well, you know what? I am going to tell one story, and I see there's a call, and this time we're going to catch you before you get away. But real quick, you know, back in the days when we were touring and kind of in this, you know, this mid-level, and we started, you know, Prince decided early on that he did not want to open for other people. And, you know, he had heard that you know, Springsteen would only do shows by himself. And so we stopped. But there was a period of time where we were doing smaller venues and we were having comedians open for us, which was actually kind of a perfect thing. So there was one time we were in Dallas and we had like a night off. And a guy named Keenan Ivory Wayans was on the road opening for us at the time. And we were looking for some party or something out in the middle of nowhere. It was where it was like dark, and the rental car broke down. And man, I'm hearing this scratching in the back seat, and Keenan says, "Man, I'm writing this down. This is going to be a comedy routine." So a ton of those stories. That was a short one, so I picked that one. But and he and his brothers, they kind of ended up doing all right. They did all right for themselves. But you cross paths early on, and then things happen, and it's interesting how all of that kind of transpires. But we got Steve in Nashville. Steve, come on board. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I just wanted to address a couple of things you were chatting about earlier. One was the talk radio versus podcast. And I've got a 23-year-old son and 27-year-old son, and I've asked them the questions of why they listen to podcasts instead of radio, whether it be talk radio or music radio. And their comment was it's just too many commercials. Every time they turn the radio on, there's a commercial. And then their playlist on the music side is somebody's, playing the same 10 songs over and over. So that was their take on why they don't listen to radio.
And here's the thing: what's the point of listening to music radio? And I'm not trying to diss or hate, but with all the discovery platforms that there are, from Spotify to whatever, and the fact that you can just plug into the search bar. Because I'll get a wild hair. Hey, I want to hear Dancing Madly Backwards by Captain Beyond. Well, you can do that. So I can understand. And for younger people, radio as a way of life changed. And even, things like formats. There was a point where there was rock radio. And then it was like, well, there's 1,500 different kinds of rock. So, you know what I mean? And things change. But I see the point. The good news is that there's something for everybody. There are folks that love talk radio. And, it's like I was saying earlier, it's an opportunity for them to kind of get the news of the day and get informed, without having to read 18 different blogs and, read 3 different newspapers. And, I get it.
Well, well, I'll just give you one other point on this. There used to be a DJ in town, or what do you want to call him, a talker, but he talked all the time, and he would never shut up and let any caller talk. And so a lot of people quit listening to that particular person because they couldn't get a word in, and it became opinion radio versus talk radio. So I won't say any names, but the next point I was going to make is about the price of concert tickets. I remember when they were $10 and $12, but what I've been told is because nobody's buying albums anymore, the artists have to make their money on their ticket sales and merch instead of their music because nobody's buying the album. And so that's the reason for the cost of the ticket. So I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what I've been told.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, and it's not new. It's been this way for a long time. That, the way you make money as an artist is the revenue that you generate in live shows, because once we got past the heyday of radio airplay and country was kind of the last, bastion in terms of you could make money as an artist getting played on the radio, then, and it's a smart thing. I know lots of folks that make more money on their merch than anything else, and that's a smart thing. So anyway, some good calls. Again, we have a couple of people that bailed on us, and, when I'm back in May, don't you do that. If you call in, you hang in there until we get a chance to talk. But we're going to take another break before we wrap it up, and it's Dez Dickerson in for Chad Benson on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good to be back. I've had fun today. Hope you have too. And we'll be right back. Wow. Expecting to hear Walter Cronkite after all that. Oh, gosh.
That's some old school news music there, man.
That's crazy.
That's a special report.
See, you got to bring that back, Ken. You got to bring that back.
Some people say I do.
Well,
some people say I'm too old school sometimes.
You can't be too old school. See, anybody that's saying that hasn't lived long.
That's right.
Yet.
That's right.
As they say, you just keep on living. You just keep on living because you're going to find out. So it's been great, Belle and Ken got the band back together, after we got the initial technical issues out of the way, kind of got our equilibrium. It was like Weebles for a minute. We wobbled for a minute, but we didn't fall down.
I freaking loved those toys.
Oh, weren't they awesome?
Yeah, because they didn't fall down.
And, toys used just to be so ingenious, simple ideas, and, sold billions of dollars worth of just crazy, silly little toys, But those days aren't coming back. I mean, it is what it is. So
yeah, it's all virtual now, dude.
That's right. So I'm going to mention real quick, I want to be back in May. I think on the 27th. I'm back, and then again on the 29th. I think, what is that, a Tuesday and a Thursday?
Yeah, it's Tuesday and Thursday.
So mark your calendar, save the date. And like I said, if you call in, don't you dare hang up. You hang in there. But it's been a blast. And, it's funny. When I first started, the very first show that I ever did, I did my show prep and I got about, 15 minutes into the second hour and I was out of notes. So I've learned, and now I like over prepare. So I have enough show prep. Usually a single show, I got enough for like 2 shows. And so
better too much than too little.
Absolutely. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So there's some stuff we didn't get to. I don't know if the shelf life is going to be such that, we can revisit these things in May. But at any rate, I hope everyone has a wonderful, it's Good Friday. And I was going to mention real quick, I've lived here 34 years now. And having moved here, as the gentleman mentioned earlier, from Minnesota, and, people get Good Friday off here. When we first moved here, it was like, wow, it's a holiday here. Minnesota, folks hardly paid attention. So it's Good Friday. Have a great Easter. Love you. We'll see you next time. It's Dez. See you next time. Bye-bye.